Broadview Heights High School Auditorium, 6380 Mill Road, Broadview Heights. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as an indicated agenda item. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call. Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman? Mr. Joseph? Yes. Mrs. Wigman is unable to join us this evening. Item 2A is President's announcements. I have none, so we can move on to the fun part of the agenda, which is recognizing our wonderful staff and student body and all their wonderful accomplishments. So item 3A.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. So yes, as Mr. Joseph stated, we have several students who have done some amazing things over the past few months, and we love to recognize them. So I'm going to ask Mr. Dutray to come up to the podium, and he's going to read off some names, and we have some certificates for you. Mr. Joseph, I'm joined down.
Each year we get to celebrate the accomplishments of our students. Each year we get to celebrate the accomplishments of our students and celebrate their hard work and effort in this board meeting like we are having this evening. And so the first team I'd like to recognize are the 19 straight state championship team, our gymnastics team. So, and I'll announce your names. Members of that state championship team are Alina Algi, Jenny Bansu, Aaron Delahunty, Lindsay Kern, Delaney Evans, Ella Shaheen, Leah Haverdill, Abby Henning, Tessa Long, Jeannie Winson, Ava Audino, Avery Butler, Rachel Kelly, and Gianna Ravagnani. Individual champions, state champions in that group are Aaron Delahunty and Gianna Ravagnani. We have certificates for them.
Several of the gymnasts are competing in their state club meet, and Mrs. Schneider and her family are attending Cleveland Sports Awards, so they are unable to be here with us.
Let's give a round of applause to them. Congratulations, ladies. Next, I would like to recognize our state qualifiers from our swimming team, coached by Mark and Marianne Krasinski. Can I have the following students come up for recognition? Annie Krasinski, Elena Sadowski, Dylan Escano, Caroline King, Coco Malnar, Cece Pickett, and Molly Ryan. Let's give another round to these state qualifiers.
Move on, I want to make sure that we thank the Krasinskis who took this swim team to such a level that I don't think any of us could imagine. So we're selfless, this community's lucky to have you, and I want to make sure that we absolutely recognize you. So thank you for all your time, effort. Just an amazing ride. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call for Mr. Haverdell and the state championship wrestling team, or state championship runner-up wrestling team. Members Evan Rizzo, Sean Earl, Max Venadia, Chase Pluhar, Brett Stanley, Manny Skordos, Luke Venadia, Caden Jett, Harrison Hafner, Caden Pluhar, David Zabonis, Frank Gallo, Grant Goza, Riley McPherson, and Justin David. Congratulations to the state runner. If you were a state placer, please step forward. Let me see. So, state placer, Brett Stanley, Luke Venadia, Manny Skordos, Chase Pluhar, and Luke Venadia. All state placers this year. The next group we'd like to recognize are members of our speech and debate team. At this year's state tournament, they finished 9th as a team out of 79 teams. If there are any members who are here, I do believe everybody's at a competition. Yeah, they're in a banquet. Well, what we want to recognize are those individuals who made it to the quarterfinals. Gabrielle Lagalin for informative speaking, Eliana Gamboa for program oral interpretation, and our finalists this year, Colette Sarley Freeman as a finalist in congressional debate, Michaela Cam, 6th in humorous interpretation, James Patrick, 2nd in congressional debate, Jaden Gamboa, 2nd in declamation, and Garrett Travers, another state championship for him in original oratory. This is his 2nd year in a row. Next, I see Mr. Kovach here and members of our state championship 2011 F. If you guys could come forward. This year at the state tournament, that took place on March 12th, 3 of our teams, 2011C, 2011D, and 2011F, also qualified for our World Championships that will be held in Dallas, Texas on May 5th through 7th. Right now, we recognize Team 211F, who were the state champions in this year's tournament. Members Brian Joseph, Alex Fliss, Jake Banks, Eric Bowler, Zach Meehes, and Andy Winston. Congratulations. Thanks. And lastly, I would like to give a shout out to this year's the Wind Ensemble and Chamber Orchestra, the students and directors in those two groups for earning a superior rating of 1 in Class A competition at this year's state adjudication. Congratulations on your success in representing our music program, school, and community. What did I miss? Thank you.
I'd like to say on behalf of the board, thank you for the level that you've taken this district to. You know, I said the Krasinskis are wrestling. My goodness, Mr. Haverdale, every year you have done amazing. And without you, I mean, these boys are lucky. We're so lucky to have you as a coach. I want to thank you. Robotics, you are world renowned. I traveled with my daughter with softball, and if people know robotics, they know Brecksville, Broadview Heights. So, Mr. Co-Watch, if you're here, I mean, yeah, you did this, you built this, and you are as famous as far in robotics as LeBron is in basketball. So, just thought I'd tell you that. They knew you in Alabama. So I want to make sure that I point that out. And our debate team, I mean, I remember when that started back up. Mr. McCandless, who's no longer with us, picked up that baton and ran at it. So again, we are lucky that somebody has continued that. And debate was not here when I started on this board. So you have made us proud as well. Unbelievable how far you've taken us. And our music program is always the best. So I don't know if you know that, but our band, people talk about us all over. So, you know, thank you all for all you've done. I don't know if you'll recognize it when you get out of the Brecksville bubble. I mean, we're the bomb. And so thank you for helping us have that level and add that to our heritage. Thank you all.
One thing, in accordance with Mrs. Mack here, not only thanking the student athletes, coaches, debate, music, you guys are all amazing, but I think a big thanks also goes to the families and parents and guardians that have stood beside you and helped support you this whole way through. There's no way that you all become and achieve what you have without that. So a big thank you to the supportive families that we have for our students as well.
All right, a lot of love going around and a lot deserved, so congratulations to all of you. We're going to move on with our agenda. If you want to stick with us, you're more than welcome. If you want to bow out, I'll be offended. All right, we're going to go to item 4A, board member committee reports. Financial liaison audit committee, Kathleen and I, we already had the audit committee. We passed the audit with flying colors, so that's really an annual event, so there's nothing more than that. Permanent improvement committee, Ellen and myself.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, April 7th at 4 o'clock.
Okay. Board policy committee, Kathleen and Tish.
Sorry. Okay, so we did meet on April 16th via Zoom. Oh, March 16th. Sorry, I'm already a month ahead. So we met March 16th this month. via Zoom. We discussed several legal alerts and policy changes that align with state laws. I'm under the understanding that we're going to be holding first readings of those changes that need to be made of the new policy next month. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with policy.
Right, we're going to move on to item 5A, district committee reports. We have Transportation Appeals Committee, which is myself. There have been no new appeals, which is good. Cuyahoga Valley Career Center report. No. We don't have an update. So we need to make sure to touch base with them for next month. Safety and security meeting report. Brittany, Tish.
Yes, we just met yesterday, and just to make sure that I do this right, that I share the right information. So we just met yesterday. There was a presentation done by Revo on our new access control system that's definitely going in at the elementary, and then we're rolling it out at all the buildings. It was very high tech. It was incredibly interesting presentation. We'll definitely have state-of-the-art ways to get in our buildings and track that. So to manage things in the buildings, so that's amazing. There'll be the elementary safety drill will occur this summer in July 25th, and that'll be training with Brexwell and Rocky Heights PE and fire departments. That'll be done this summer. Then the building drill certification. They're doing a tabletop drill certification next month because all of the safety plans for the buildings need to be certified by June. So
Okay, very good. The next is school foundations report. Brittany is not here, but she did text me an update, which I will share with you now. The recent fundraiser raised $20,000 for classroom grants. This is even more than last year's total. A heartfelt thank you from the trustees goes out to those who donated and bid on auction items. The school's foundation also has openings for trustees, and interested parties should reach out to info@bbhsf.org. PSO report. Ellen.
Most recent PSO council meeting was March 3rd. Many of the events that were highlighted at that meeting have already occurred. So I won't obviously report on those, but every school PSO has your yard signs now on sale. There is a flower sale, which is a big fundraiser for them to be placed in April. So keep your eyes open for specifics on that. The school PSO announced that musician Rick Smith Jr. is coming back again. He'll be performing in the district on April 23rd. There's 2 shows that day after the unique performance. People are interested in having fun and supporting the middle school PSO. The elementary school PSOs, as we all know, are emerging in February. They voted on and installed the 2023 PSO executive board for the new elementary school, and they approved the new standing rules for the new elementary school PSO. And there's been a lot of other activity of the PSOs at the elementary schools. They're collaborating on different end of school events, which, you know what I'm saying, end of school events as opposed to just end of school year events. So there's some things in the works in that regard. The other big news was the band boosters are traveling to Disney, performing there actually in a few days. The next meeting is Thursday, April 7th.
Very good. Other board member reports. Does anyone else have anything? No? Okay. On to item 6, superintendent's announcements. Turn it over to Joelle.
Thank you, Mr. Dosen. So in the agenda, there are 2 monthly updates on the new building. There's February's report in there and March. And the reason we have February in here is it came after our board meeting, so we wanted to make sure that we included it in this meeting. In addition, starting this past Monday, we started taking groups of teachers over to the new building so they can start to see their spaces and visualize their classrooms. We've had nothing but positive feedback. We've had over 60 staff members already tour the building. Colleen Toth and her team did a really nice job of having how she assigned the rooms to everyone. She engaged them in an activity and they got to open a box and have to put together a puzzle that had a missing puzzle piece. And then they had to go find which room had that missing puzzle piece. So that's how the rooms were assigned. This staff was very appreciative of that it was assigned in this double random kind of way that she did that. I'm going to follow up on what Mrs. Kramer said about dates of the closing of schools and what we're doing to celebrate the opening of the new school. We have come up with dates and they're on one sheet. They will be linked in an email to our community tomorrow. We'll share those with the board as well. Dates that will start from the end of this school year, closing the buildings, things that we're doing over the summer, and then how we're engaging the community soon, early in the fall, to have our community tour the new building prior to us starting school. So all of that will be on our website, posted and linked to an email tomorrow. And I would just like to wish everyone a happy spring break and enjoy some much deserved time off.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item 7, treasurer's announcements. Turn it over to Craig.
I do not have any announcements.
Very good. We'll move on then to item 8, community communications, hearing of the public. Before I read this narrative, is there anyone who wishes to be heard this evening? Seeing no one, I will dispense with reading that, and we will move on to item 9, other board business. Item A, live streaming board committee meetings discussion. So just to frame this in, we started this discussion last month at our last meeting. And as you saw earlier in the agenda, we have kind of 2 groups of committees. We have what we call district committees and board committees. And in the past, they were treated very similarly until we recently realized that board committee meetings need to abide by the similar standards as regular board meetings, which means they need to be noticed. You need to take minutes and publish minutes. And as part of that process, we were asking and having a discussion about whether it also made sense for us to live stream and record our meetings. We're not required to do so, but since we're doing our regular board meetings, we thought we should discuss that and see if that made sense and where the board was at. Part of that discussion also involved Board Docs, which is our platform we use to record all of our meeting agendas and meeting notes and attachments. And right now we're using a regular version of Board Docs, and there's a couple of upgrades, which if you end up using Board Docs to manage your committee meetings, you could, if you purchase the upgrade, you could segregate your committee meetings in kind of a separate area. So there's a discussion here also about what Board Docs looks like in terms of what it would cost to do the upgrade, what we would get from it. And that's all part of the conversation. I also, maybe just to kick this topic off, I had asked Craig to do a little bit of homework to find out, what's the difference between having the committees as district committees versus board committees, and what do other districts do? Because we weren't real clear why a particular committee is right now categorized as a district committee versus a board committee, but that quick categorization brings along with it requirements. So, Greg, are you able to share any of the results you have?
Sure. So I took a survey of some of our comparable districts data. And so we have a couple different districts that replied, and there's 11 here. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but so there's not everyone even uses Board Docs. That was one of the questions, whether or not they actually, whether they use Board Docs. And then if they do, which version, are they using? And then probably the most effective one is if they have board committees, or, do they have board committees, I guess. So some districts that we compare to do not have any board committees at all, and they just use district committees. And then there's obviously some that do. And then I asked them what board board committees do they have if they do have them? So you can see some of those listed here. So you see finance, buildings and facilities, similar to our permanent improvement, curriculum, sometimes school and community policies is very common. And then the last question was kind of asking, check the following that you do if you're doing that such, having that kind of board committee meeting. And so some don't, if they don't have a meeting, obviously it's listed, but if some of them just create agendas. Other ones do send the public notice 24 hours in advance, do the meetings, and they do record the minutes. And so it's kind of a little mixture, I guess, of what's going on in the grand scheme of things. I think that everyone's kind of around. This is a difficult, there's guidance from OSBA, obviously, but I think boards in general struggle with this because it's a weird area of what defines the difference. And so what does define the difference is what is listed in board policy, and what is listed in our board policy are the 3 committees that we currently have. So hope that helps.
Right. So like if the board had, if the board decided, well, let's just convert these board committees into district committees, if that was something we wanted to do, we would need to change our policy and remove the 3 board committees that are now documented in our policy. Is that correct? Correct. And is there, I guess, so that's an option to do all 3 or to just do some of them. So we have a variety of options in front of us. I think if we take a look at all 3 of the committees, though, the financial liaison audit really only meets mostly once a year, and it's just to go over the audit that's performed by the state. The state audits all districts every year to make sure we're in compliance. So that's really just a once a year meeting, right? I'm not sure if that would, because another thing you could do is we could eliminate the committees potentially and roll the topic right into a board meeting. Now on a financial liaison, I'm not sure how easy that would be to do because the auditor need to be available and they typically wouldn't be thrilled with coming here at 7 p.m. right?
I'm sure they would do that for us, but yeah.
Versus something like permanent improvement, those meetings we could potentially fold, eliminate that committee and just fold that content instead of just having a committee, just bring that into a board meeting and say, hey, we're going to do a work session on permanent improvement. That would be one, or that would be another option. And then board policy, same thing, although board policy, I assume probably gets into a lot more granularity and details. It may not be. It's interesting to sit through an entire board meeting on it, but anyway, those are kind of the different options that we can explore, as well as leave them all 3 the way they are. Not live stream them, convert some, remove some as board committees, make them district committees, or fold the content into a regular board meeting. What are other board members thinking on this?
I'm gonna weigh in, and I have not been on the board policy committee, so that's our reserve just to the permanent improvement committee. And I'm gonna bring Mr. Code into this conversation because he's really in charge of scheduling those meetings and in charge of all the subject matter. My kind of one concern about holding that into the regular board meetings is sometimes you have to be pretty agile with your decisions on that committee, and I'm afraid that might be kind of challenging to do if it's part of this big group.
So, I mean, my only answer to that, to Ellen, is I think Mark addressed it, is that could be a work session format. Because you're right, we do get into some detail, and there's actually a lot of conversation that occurs in those meetings, but that could be a work session format rather than a board committee, possibly. There is a lot of information.
Chris, do you see any issues if the board decided we wanted to fold that committee, just terminate it and roll those same meetings into work sessions? Are there anything we're missing if we wanted to do that?
No, I mean, the same information would be presented at a work session for the entire board.
And they can also be moved as district committees too, where you still report each month or whatever as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be as a board meeting or whatever it is, but it could just be as a district committee meeting. Right. Right. That could be the other option. Yeah, because it's almost, there's still usually one or two board members assigned to those committees.
Okay, so when you envision it as a work session, we do it in conjunction with another regular scheduled board meeting, just do it.
Correct. Yeah, we wouldn't do two meetings. We would do a work session on the front end of the meeting and roll that. Right. So like
Talking
on
about the whole board though.
yes, yeah, the whole board would be invited because we need a work session.
Right.
And that's permissible too with, so each individual meeting is board members receive a stipend payment for it. So if you structured it as two different meetings, you technically get a stipend for each meeting versus if you do a work session, you can roll that into a board meeting and it's considered one meeting, so to speak.
Correct.
So what should we do? We have, like, for example, we have, how do we for this? We have a VIP coming up there now.
Well,
Can I ask?
well, yeah, we're trying to decide now for it. This committee meeting that's coming up, we can decide if we want to do anything or just hold it because it's literally coming up in 2 weeks. So we haven't, tonight, if we decide, well, let's see where we land. Depending on where we land, we can decide what happens with this meeting that we're having in 2 weeks.
If they were to be folded into work sessions, those are still public meetings, we would still live stream those and then it's going straight. So then, because I know the community members that, want to attend, sometimes our policy meeting or committee meetings are too early, it might work out better for, community members that want to watch those sessions if they were work sessions. So, because it would be later. I just want to make sure that it would be part of the public meeting.
Right, and it would still work the same way is that there's no public participation during that time.
Right,
So
right.
it's a watch only type of.
Correct. Just as the meetings are now, they are not public participation.
Just this part of the meeting has a section.
Right.
Designed for it.
Clarification, I agree with you on the time. Plus it's difficult for board members, which I continually said to make those times. But the other thing is, so will the whole board attend the work session? Is that what you said? So
Well,
then,
if we wanted to use that option, I was just throwing out.
no, I'm asking like for clarification on when we're talking about work sessions. That's the whole board attending.
But yes, the whole
Permanent
board,
improvement.
the whole board would be invited, if certain board members chose not to come, as long as we had 3, we would still be a valid board meeting.
Well, you don't need it to be a valid board meeting for work session, do you?
Well, it's still part of a board meeting, because remember, we talked about the work session. It's really, you're starting a meeting, the first part of the meeting is a work session, then you're rolling into the regular.
Okay.
So it's considered one meeting because we would get,
That's what
we
you said.
pay the stipend for one meeting, not 2
Right.
meetings.
So it'd be, you'd have to have a majority to have it, but I'm trying to think through the logistics. Now, what about that extra person who's not assigned to that committee? Doesn't matter. Is it
Well,
relevant?
if we rolled it in, we wouldn't have a committee.
Okay,
That would be the option would be to disband let's just talk about permanent improvement. If we disbanded the permanent improvement committee, the solution to it would be we're going to have permanent improvement meetings on an ongoing basis like we do now with committee meetings, except they're going to be front loaded onto a regular board meeting as part of a work session.
so don't we have do we have the mayor attend those permanent improvement or, no? Okay. It's just,
It's usually just the 5.
is it? Okay.
I mean, the cleanest thing, the easiest, the path of least resistance would be just keep everything the same and just let's just decide to live stream and record the meetings. That way they're available to anybody who wants to see them. And even if the meeting's held at 4 o'clock, it doesn't matter because the recording will be out there. So whoever wants to dial in and watch it can just watch it.
And I have fresh in my mind that meeting that we had last year, like on December 30th. And do you remember that? Because you did something to do with
I could see that being hard to, granted that we came up one time, but.
So you're, of these three board committees, you're actually talking about 6 meetings. So it's two PI meetings a year that were required, 2 policy meetings, and then the 1 financial meeting, actually, yeah, so 5 meetings. So you can just assign which month you want to have those meetings. So if February is the PI meeting, and then March is the policy meeting, or whatever it is, and just assign them ahead when we do our organizational meeting in January, and just assign them so that people know they want to come to the PI meeting work session, they come before, and we set them up ahead of time. And that's what you know. But the reality is 5 meetings that we're talking about.
And I was only just voicing that the one time last December, when you just meet, and I guess we must cross that.
I guess, or you could do a hybrid to do what Joelle's saying, when you have 5, you have 5 meetings are just designated, but then you can still assign 1 or 2 board members on a district level. If there was something in the intermediary that you just handled as a district committee, but then the board would have the larger discussion about those 5 meetings throughout the year at an assigned time. So you could really do a combination of both, I guess.
Okay, I like that idea. It offers more of an opportunity for public engagement, more of an opportunity for board member engagement. You know, as long as we did what Craig said, where I like the idea of also assigning people, so that if we had more, some committees, like policy is not gonna have more, but maybe PI might have, or safety and security especially. So, I mean, that seems like a win-win to me if we did it that way and use that hybrid model. That's my thought, and we would live stream it still.
How long are the policy?
Usually 30 to 45 minutes, probably an hour at the most.
So I'll just qualify that. It depends on the size of the update. So like last month it was a very small update, but we've got policies where, I mean, there's been like 40 to go through. So it just depends. But I would say on average, it's about an hour. But if there is such a situation where we're getting a large update, we can always bring it into a meeting.
So the financial liaison audit, to have that audit meeting, do you think the auditors will be available at a 6 p.m. work session, or would need to go earlier?
No, I mean, I think they're pretty flexible. I think we want to, in the assigning part of that, I think we want to do it in the March meeting, just because I was talking earlier that we can't talk about that in public until it's been released. And so we're one of the earlier audits to get done for them. So we usually get released in February, but to play it safe, I would probably push that meeting to March. But yeah, I think that, I mean, they didn't push back. Even we did our meeting at like 4:30, I think, or 5, right? And it was fine.
I mean, you know, that approach, it does offer the benefit of having the entire board dialed into the topic versus a subset of the board, which then is going to kind of give a brief summary to us about, you know, like what's going on, PI, or what's going on with policy.
Question about documentation, Mr. Yannis. Like policy, for example, we get a binder and there's, you know, the policies that are being suggested right there. So that would just be for the policy committee. Are we obligated, like, does the public see that? Do we upload that as part of the work session? Because it's part of the work session. Do they see those?
So I think it's a choice. I mean, that would be a choice whether you upload it. We always make the choice of what we necessarily upload, because it would obviously get uploaded when you do your first read, right?
Right.
So I think that's more of like whether the board wants to do that, or whether you want to upload them ahead of time for that part of it, or just say that would be the standard would be that you'd upload those when the first read happens, but that the policy, like the board would have those policies prior to passing them, because they're not really official documents.
Right, so then that answers that. What about the rest of the committees? Would that be public documents?
I mean, anything you upload, you know,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
share it like that. So
I guess, yeah, but I guess I would ask, you know, what would be the criteria where we wouldn't upload something that the committee is discussing?
I don't know. I'm not thinking of that. I'm just thinking of the strikeouts and policy or suggestions. I haven't had it happen under Mrs. Magyar, but there have been times where he would say you could use this word, or you could use this word, and here's why you might not want to use this word. So to have it in, I don't have any problem with the public seeing it, as long as, you know, a news outlet doesn't just take that away. But there's some time, and that hasn't really happened for a while.
Yeah, and
So-
I think, we would want to take measures like making sure there's like a draft watermark on it, or, that would be attached under an agenda item, that would be work session, and maybe you qualify it, but, since I've been on the board, we have strived to post everything we see out into the public domain, short of executive content material that is not, that can't be shared with the public for legal reasons. So, what it's sounding like that this idea has some traction with the board. Is that correct? So what we're talking about is eliminating these 3 committees and rolling those meetings into full board meetings on the front end of a regular board meeting as an executive sessions, which means the public would have complete access to either attend in person or live stream or watch the recording meeting. So it would be completely transparent. If we did that, we would then have to change our policy to just eliminate these 3 board meetings from our policy.
Correct. So I would say like right now, the PI committee would stay for April, and then you could probably keep up the same policy. We could probably update from first read for April, second read for May.
Yeah, there won't be any other committee meetings prior to the end of school, so we can do that policy revision, change it over the summer to be effective in the fall of the next school year.
So are we all in alignment that this is what we'd like to see happen? Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, so to summarize the PI meeting that's coming up in a couple of weeks, we're going to leave that as is. We're not going to live stream that one. We'll just leave it as is, since we're just having this discussion tonight. And then moving forward, Greg, you'll look into the policy changes for next month for us to unwind the 3 board committees and resolve them, and then we'll make sure we plan to cover that same content, but with the full board on the front end of a regular board meeting and a work session.
The timing works out well because you'll be doing the first reading on the policies that we reviewed in policy committee. So we'll just add it as one of those.
That also, I think, probably is going to lead to an abbreviated conversation on board docs, since the upgrade was to handle committees, which we're now folding into it. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on board docs?
Say is to thank Mr. Nichols on doing the work to find out all the information. But that was kind of possibly a moot point, but
It's okay. That was
Thank
pretty
you.
expensive too, so I'll take the savings.
yeah.
I'm also intrigued by how many of this person.
Yeah, I was kind of too as well.
Wonder if they're using something else, although I don't know what else out there.
I think there is another product, but I didn't ask. I thought about it afterwards. I should have asked. But some don't. I mean, my prior district, we did not use it, but it's obviously smaller. So it just depends.
Well, we've had it here a number of years, and it's been a valuable asset to the district. I mean, especially now when you start getting a lot more history out there. And for those of you who haven't gone out and looked at board docs for our agendas and attachments, you can search all of our meetings, all of our past meetings, and the searches go into the attachments too. So if you want to look something up and see, when did we last talk about tennis courts, you can search on that and you can find all the agenda items in the past since we've used board docs that has the search string. Okay, very good. Why don't we move on to item E, which is Drexel Brownie Heights elementary school discussion creatives. So just to frame this in, we learned about a month ago, we have a new therapy dog. And then as board members have been getting tours of the building as it's nearing completion, there are a couple of features in the building, a dog washing station and a slide. And there were some board members that had some questions. So I will open for questions.
Do we need to go in this order, dog washing station slide?
No, we don't. You pick one.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start asking questions, and I'm gonna start with the slide, if that's okay. I did get to see a picture of it, just so that the community is clear. The slide that is going in the elementary school inside the elementary school goes from the second floor down to the first, and it's a spiral shaped slide, correct? Okay. What went into the decision making around putting up a slide indoors? Why did we want that? Why did we think that that was needed?
Need is probably not a good word to use, but I just want to talk a little bit about the philosophy of the elementary school. So when we talked about building a new elementary school, we talked about always building a state-of-the-art, innovative school for our kids. It was never a conversation to rebuild Highland and Chippewa and Hilton and just provide the kids with those opportunities that they currently have. The idea was always to provide these kids with a learning environment that they would want to go to and they would enjoy coming to school. So there are many elements in the building. The slide is one, the dog washing station is another one, but there are many elements in the building that we put into the building to make it really feel like an elementary school and to feel like it is a great learning environment where kids are wanting to come and learn. And so these are just samples, or these topics that you came up with are just some examples of some of those things that are in the building. There are many things in the building, including the slide, that are there for fun. They're there for kids. It can be used as a BBIS tool. If we have kids that are struggling with behaviors and they need to work towards a specific goal, and the reward is that they get to go down the slide. The slide is acrylic PU slide. It's completely enclosed. It has a safety gate at the top that will be locked. Kids will not just be able to go randomly down the slide whenever they want. We worked out just a way of managing the slide inside the building that when kids have media on that day, those are the days that the kids get to go down the slide. They get to go down the slide to go to media. But, in addition to, the slide and the dog washing station, there's also a selfie wall, and we have an esports wall, and we have like bright walls, and gear walls, and Lego walls, and all of these wonderful things that are going in the building to really make it feel like it's an elementary school and kids are going to want to get up and can't wait to get on the bus so that they can get to school. So these things are just one of many elements that were put into the building. I think it's important for us to remember too, that this building is still on time and under budget, to the point of which we are trending towards where we still are going to receive money back after the completion of this building, almost to the tune of $2 million. So we have been good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. We have not, spent frugally and gone over budget on anything in this project at all. And so, we were set out to build this school that is a school that kids will love to attend and want to be there. And yeah, there are many different elements that make it exciting for our youngest learners to be there.
Okay. I understand the philosophy. I think we all can get on board. We want kids to come to a state-of-the-art facility that they want to be at. Absolutely. I do have a few more questions. My understanding is, based on my tour, we have 2 outdoor playgrounds.
We have a school-age playground that is for K to 5 students, and then we have a preschool playground mandated by Ohio Revised Code that has to be a separate play area for kids.
Okay. Those include, we will have slides.
But they'll be, there is so much of the equipment that's currently at Highland is, Hilton Elementary is getting moved over there. And then in addition, as part of the building package, we purchased some additional equipment for that playground.
Okay, and safety wise, the outdoor area will have rubberized, I'm assuming rubberized particles for them to, or how is for them coming down the slide and be able to get off the equipment? What's the surface?
So in the preschool playground area, we did provide a rubberized surface there because it's easier for wheelchair access for kids to get out into the playground. In the area where all of the playground equipment will be, it will be a wood chip surface. In addition, we have things that we are painting on the blacktop. So after arrival and dismissal, the blacktop area will also be used as playground space.
Okay. So, all right. My main question was how many slides were we gonna have, and I got off track with asking about. But that leads me into the safety around the use of the slide indoors. I understand that there'll be a gate on the second floor. Can you talk to me about then at the bottom of the slide, once the kids are in media, because working in schools every day and working with young learners, knowing that when they're sitting down with that media specialist to read a book, and one child is like, I'm climbing up that slide. How are we, what are the procedures and processes that are going to be in place? Do the staff know? How are they, how are we handling?
Yeah, the staff is aware. They know about the slide. They were told on their tours today that there will be a gate on it. It will be locked at all times. The kids will learn, just like they're going to have to learn a bunch of different school rules about what they can and cannot do, that this is when the slide is appropriate inside the school. And once you're down, you're down. It drops on carpet, so it's not dropping on the vinyl floor or anything like that. So we positioned it in a way so it would drop on the carpeted surface within the media center.
So there's a gate on the bottom of the slide, is what you're saying?
No, there's a gate at the top of the slide.
So what's to prevent the kids from running up it?
I mean,
Because they do that.
well, I understand, but they do that outside as well. And so it's not something that is going to take away from media. The kids will learn that they go on the slide and they go to media, and that's just a reward that they get to do for going to media center.
So all kids can participate in that reward of going down the slide. 100% of our elementary students are able to use that slide.
Well, if some of our students can't because of certain disabilities, I'm sure we will have other reward systems in place for them, but it's really just a way for kids to get down to media. Well, like I said, I mean, if somebody has a physical disability where they're in a wheelchair, we're certainly not going to pick up the kids and put them down the slide. So there would have to be another way to, get those kids to media, which there are 2 elevators in the building that are for kids who have disabilities and are not able to, come downstairs either in the same manner.
Part of BBHCSD. What comparable thing are we offering those children as a reward for BBHCSD?
Well, it can be used as PBIS. It can be used as PBIS. It is not the only function to use as PBIS. It could be for those kids who require that type of intervention or positive behavior supports. But again, there are other fun things that are part of that building that other kids are going to be able to do. The whole idea was to make it as equitable and accessible as possible for all students that will be attending that building. So while some students might not physically be able to go down the slide, they might be able to go play with the leg break wall, or they might be able to go to the gear wall or play with the Lego walls that are going to be in the building. So there are many opportunities for kids to learn, even outside of the classroom. The building was designed to support our social and emotional learning of our students, not just the academic needs of our students.
Question 2, which is, are there other new elementary schools around that slide? Did we look around? Did we talk with them to find out like lessons learned and what would they be different?
Yeah, I mean, there's another school, actually, the superintendent on the construction job, his wife's school has a slide in their building, and it's a straight slide. It's straight down. They use it for a multitude of different reasons. It's a sensory thing for some kids as well. So, again, it's one feature in a larger picture of all the wonderful things that are going in this elementary school that have learning happening or have kids engaged in that building in different ways. The slide is just one example of it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I guess I was just asking, like, because, when we went through the whole design of the building, we're touring other districts with have a new building. You're asking them what's working for you, what didn't work. All of this, there's so much new construction going on. So that's why I was curious when you were looking at putting a slide in, you know, was there any research done like these? I wonder if anybody else has had a slide and, you know, are there any lessons learned from it? Something you can see and say, hey, it's, you know, here's how we use it, or here's things we wish we would have known ahead of time, or retrofit, like we needed to put a gate at the bottom because whatever.
No, I mean, at the time when we designed this, because this was part of the original design of the building, the slide, the dog wash was all part of the original design of the building. And if you remember, when we were having the community meetings and talking about everything we wanted to see in these buildings, the process for building is that you put everything in the building that you want, and then they cost that out. And then after they cost it out, if it's higher than what your budget is, you value engineer things out. So those things were value engineered out to get to our budget, including, just so everyone knows, including the raised platform, which is now part of the cafetorium, that was value engineered out. It's $100,000 price tag, value engineered out. When we went to bid and our bid came in much lower than our anticipated budget, some of those things were added back into the project. So yes, we added back in $100,000 raised platform so we could have a stage area for our kids. We added back in some of those things we originally took out of the project to try to keep it under budget. And yet even still, with adding some of these things back in, we're still on track to receive $2 million back of owner's contingency out of this project.
And I just, for members of the public who aren't aware of the process that the board has been engaged in during the building of this new elementary school, there is a meeting once a month. It's the second Thursday of every month that the administration attends with the people who are in charge of the project. There's a board member rep who attends that meeting. Mr. Dozen has kindly chosen to attend all of these meetings. They're at, I think, 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning. So it's been very nice of him to do that. And the timing of this conversation is a little bit problematic because these meetings happen once a month. The detail of the meeting is sent out to the board following the meeting. And all of this information that's discussed at these monthly meetings, along with all of the work and the project logs, are sent to the board. This was in the project logs from the fall of 2020. So, you know, we're talking about it now in March of 2022. I'm just going to suggest that timing is a bit off.
Well,
That worked.
And can I, Mark, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
And yes, I understand that I wasn't on the board and that we're having a discussion now. The Steiner is sending out communication to the district regarding the opening of the building. People that the community is going to be able to tour the building. So even though we're talking about it now, in a few months, people are going to be walking through the building and seeing these items, and they're going to have questions. So we're discussing it now, so the community is aware, and community members have already reached out. We have students who have gone through the building, staff members who have gone through the building, and have actually reached out to board members with questions about the building. So that was my reasoning for trying to ask some questions and getting them answered, so the community would have something to refer to.
Okay, and I'm just explaining to the public what our process is. So
Yeah, and so, yeah, like the dog wash station and the slide was in a, you know, has been in a change log for like a year and a half, but, you know, I'm part of the committee, the core meeting that goes to it. I even forgot that those were in the building. I mean, you know, those change logs are very long. There's a lot of detail. I know we get 3 of them every month updated. So, which is fine. But all I'm saying, and Tish touched on it, you know, now that the building is getting closer to completion, you're seeing the elements come into the building, and board members are getting tours to the building, as well as public is starting to see it. So, you know, that's why I think some of this discussion is starting to happen now. I would also just echo to, you know, what Joelle was saying is absolutely correct in that this project has been run incredibly well, very efficient, on time, on budget. So these questions about some of these elements that are in the building are not about the financial piece, not like, oh, well, geez, why did we spend money on this or spend money on that? It's more just from an educational standpoint, from a security standpoint, how it's safety, how we're going to use this. So, but from a financial standpoint, and I've been on this process the whole way through as the board representative, the financials are fantastic. And, just for, I guess, everybody, if you all remember years ago when the community was gracious enough and generous enough to pass the bond issue to generate the money, the original plan was to have enough money to not just build a new school, but to also take care of other permanent improvement needs, which we have done. We have used some of that bond money to do other things in the district, and we continue to. And as we're building this building, we have contingency built in, and because the project has been run so well, and some of it was good fortune because all of the supply chain issues and inflation that's going on, that has gone on because of the pandemic, we got most of that in ahead of time. So we got really fortunate. I mean, we're hearing horror stories from other districts that are building new buildings that were later in the process because they're getting hammered by inflation and supply chain and delays. And so, we caught a really good break by starting when we did with the pandemic. But anyway, we are taking contingency money that was not needed in this building, and we're reallocating it towards other permanent improvement needs. So just to amplify what Joelle said, these elements that we're talking about, it has nothing to do with financially. If we afford to do some of these things, because in the grand scheme of things, these are very small. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. Yes, they are part, it's all taxpayer money that's building the whole building. So that's all in there, but just be aware that financially the new building has gone incredibly well, and some very good luck with the pandemic and inflation and supply chain that we got in before a lot of that really started to make the numbers look.
There was two last, and I think you already answered them, but I'm just gonna, for clarity. Staff are aware there's a slide, and staff are aware they're good with the front loading, the priming, the behavioral expectations they're gonna have to teach and continue to teach. At the beginning of the year and throughout the year. Because it's not just a slide, right? It's gonna be the entire building, and everything. But they're aware, they're all good. Yeah. Okay. And then obviously, because the slide's in there, it falls under our insurance and liability. We're good on that. Yeah. Okay. That's, I think that answers.
Slide was
Your mic's on.
The slide was $26,000. I understand in the grand scheme of things, that's very little. I remember how difficult it was for us to get that levy passed. And just, I have to say, the optics alone, I personally, and I'll speak for myself, I'm not comfortable with it. It seems very ostentatious. It seems like, you had to put a slide in the media center. I can tell you that the media center in the school district, because I teach in it every day, is very loud. And then we're going to add a slide to it. And there's very little places for things to be quiet. Also, knowing that, in my opinion, that we haven't done so great on behalf of our special ed children, the fact that I know that these children are not going to be able to use this slide, not all, but some of them, saddens me. Go over to the wall. I mean, it's just one more obstacle that they have in their lives. And because I know that we haven't done so hot in that area, and I don't want to start bringing up the dog back or anything. I'm talking about the slide. I feel saddened by the fact that they see that in their first educational experience. So yes, it was there. I didn't have a board member sitting on that committee, and I entrusted our superintendent to make good educational decisions. You know, I saw indoor slide and wasn't quite sure. I couldn't imagine why we would put a slide in the school until it started coming back to me from the public. So yes, this ship has sailed. And I can't say I didn't know about it. I did not know it was the middle of a media center. And in light of all the things that have occurred with special ed, had I actually recognized that, I would have done everything to stop it. So I apologize to the public for that, and I am not going to buy the fact that it's not going to make certain children, it's not going to make children sad, especially little children who are wheelchair bound.
So being in special education and what I'm going to weigh in on that, I do think I was a part of these decisions, but I do think that we could have looked at something that would have been more accessible. There are plenty of things on the market that could be more accessible for students with physical disabilities. Knowing that the slide is what it is, I guess I would ask that the district utilize its related services that we have, physical therapy, occupational therapy, to look at the slide and work with the district to determine accessible ways that our students with physical disabilities may be able to utilize that slide and participate in it in some way.
Yeah, we can move on.
Then I guess we could do the therapy dog, ask the therapy dog at the dog washing station questions at the same time. If you guys are.
Yep, go ahead. Just a discussion, so it's good questions, good comments.
So going back, I know that there was an article in the Brecksville and Broadview Heights magazine and journal. So what was the need for the therapy dog? The board is getting emails now. We're getting a lot of community input about the therapy dog. So if you could kind of just revisit again what the need was that we determined the therapy dog was an intervention of support that we wanted to jump in on.
So it's a tool in the toolbox. So as you know, there's not one way to teach something that all kids learn that particular way. Not all kids respond to the same SEL triggers as other kids. So the dog is a tool in a toolbox to support the social and emotional needs of our kids. And so we have been having this conversation for over 2 years. It started with our law enforcement officers when we knew that we were going to have a permanent SRO in the building to see if one of our law enforcement officers could be the handler for the dog. That was not something that the city wanted to see, and so we needed to find a handler, but using the same trainers that the cities of Brecksville and Broadview Heights are using to train their police dogs. That the training company also trains therapy dogs. So again, the dog was just a tool. The dog so far has been a great asset to kids. We have taken the puppy on a leash, on a harness, in my arms, not roaming around the school. I think there's a visual out there that people think this dog is just going to walk around the school. No, the dog has been in a crate in a guidance counselor's office most of the days. It's taken out to the school. It's being held in the arms of the handlers, and the kids can come up and pet it if they choose. I walked the dog down the hill to recess the other day at Hilton, and the kids all came over and petted it if they wanted it. If they didn't want to pet it, they didn't have to. We took the dog over to the preschool to see the kids. One of our nonverbal autistic children at the preschool, when her eyes saw the dog, she yelled out, "Dog." And it was a very emotional moment for teachers because the child hasn't spoken. We had the dog at the high school one afternoon, and we had a student who was sitting in the Zen den, very upset, would not come out of the Zen den, refused to attend class. We took Coco into the Zen den. The girl's face lit up. She sat in there and petted the puppy for about 10 minutes and pulled herself together and said she was ready to go to class. So while the dog may not work for all children, it is definitely, she's made a difference with many kids. We had a similar experience at the middle school with a child who refused to come to school, came to school one day, saw the puppy, and has been at school every day since because they want to see the puppy. And so it works for some kids. It is a tool in the toolbox to help students who are struggling socially or emotionally. It's just one other element. We have things in place where if parents don't want their child around dogs, they don't have to, they can opt out. The dog does not have to be with them in any way, shape, or form. We've also changed our emergency cards. So now one of the questions we're asking, if there's a fear of dog or an allergy of a dog, those kids will be flagged the same way we do kids with peanut allergies or any other, and provided a list to teachers and to staff members that will know that these children in these particular classrooms either are allergic to the dogs or have a fear of the dog.
So let me clarify this. A month ago, I was standing in the checkout aisle at a grocery store and I found out we're getting a dog. You didn't run this by the board at all, didn't care about my opinion, and I represent the public. So you didn't ask that, you went and made a decision on your own in a vacuum. That's upsetting to me, and I think, as we've seen in emails, that's upsetting to our public. I'm not anti-dog. I love when we put process in place. Process where the board who represents people and we ask people, staff, what they want, not make decisions on our own. And I guess that's the first thing that really gets to me, is that you didn't care enough about any of our opinions to ask us. The second thing is, just like the slide, another obstacle in a public school, because there we did get an email and we will continue getting them, children who cannot be around that dog. I think the dog's a great thing. I think with a real therapist, not a counselor from our school, a therapist like they use in Children's Hospital, it would be a great thing, because it's not the dog that's the therapy, it's how the dog is used. So that's a whole nother can of worms, that we don't have a licensed dog therapist. This is a puppy right now. I never saw anything to ask me if I could opt out of my child doing that. So we're still negating parents' rights, don't care about it. We're just taking that dog around. And like I said, the thing is that we have enough obstacles, and these kids have enough obstacles, and we just created another one, and a permanent one at that. It's not something that comes in and out, and we don't have to come to school that day. We have a child who has an allergy. She's standing in the hallway with her toy dog, as we read in an email, because she can't be around that. And she's crying because she's sad. Okay, she's a kindergartner. She doesn't get that. So why? For what reason? So this is I think it's a great idea with the process. There was no process to decide to get this dog.
So you mentioned that the dog will be trained by organization that trains the police. Can we know who that is, or what?
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to provide you information on the training.
And so what makes her then a therapy dog? Does she get service animals come with papers, they get certified. Therapy dogs, not so much. I mean, it's kind of a wide ranging area. So how will the district know that this dog is trained to be able to maintain a calm demeanor, manage many people, many different environments? How do we know that?
The dog goes through training as well as the handlers, and after the training program is over, the dog will receive papers, the trainers will receive certifications that they are certified handlers of the dog. The training process, I can give this all to you. The training process is the dog, starting at 3, 6, and 9 months, they go on board with the training company. So the dog is not with us for those periods of time. They go and train, and then they come back. And then they go back and train, and they come back. So the training process is a long process. We all are involved in that training process. The early on training is happening right now. The gentleman comes here once a week and works with us and the dog to build in that training. But at the end of the program, we will all be certified handlers, and the dog will be certified as a therapy dog, and we'll be provided that paperwork.
She's insured.
Yes.
She's covered by our insurance policy.
Yes, so we have a policy right now that allows animals within our schools. And so we currently have animals in our schools. We have lots of animals at the high school in some of the labs. And so, it's not like our kids are not exposed to having animals in schools. There's pets that are in the classrooms at the middle school. So, the dog is actually really no different, and it is in policy that it's something that we do permit to have in our schools.
Okay. Because I just want to know in case, because the dog hasn't been trained yet. She's one time a week. I know that I've been in the district a few days this week, and I've seen the dog now in 2 separate buildings being handled by 2 to 3 different people. So that's why I want to know, like, if this dog were to bite someone, what happens?
So,
just as a puppy, and they out, and
absolutely. It wouldn't be any different than the snake in the science lab that bit somebody. Yes, of course. We don't want that to happen. And certainly with the handlers, we do. Denise Schwartle is one of our guidance counselors. We're currently housed at the middle school, and she and Tina McCauley, one of our principals at the elementary school, are currently handling her. So yes, you probably have seen her with 2 different people being handled. Those are the 2 people who are mostly being trained, and then Colleen Toth and myself are also being trained. When the dog goes to board, we're going to have to go out to the training center to learn and work on commands with the dog.
And that's all volunteer. You guys are all volunteering your time. It's not, we're not paying a stipend. We're not. Okay, so now, how do I heard about the flagging of students that might be allergic, or how else can parents opt out, or can staff opt out if they don't want the dog in their room? I guess I have questions about how the dog's going to be utilized.
Yeah, so the dog, if the dog goes in the classroom, the dog is going to be with their handlers most of the time in the building. It's not like this dog is going to be wandering up and down hallways, at all. So the dog right now, when she's with Denise, she's in Denise's office. When she's with Tina, she's in Tina's office. We take the dog out to obviously go to the bathroom. The dog will come out in the hallway. Kids have the opportunity to pet if they want. If they don't want to, they don't have to. We're not taking the dog to classrooms and having the dog sitting there for 15 minutes and, doing any kind of lessons with it. Right now, because the dog isn't fully trained, we're not allowing access to the classrooms. Denise is very much excited about having the dog because she is certified in SEL trainings and wants to use the dog in possibly some of her guidance lessons. If parents do not want that as an option, they can opt out of that guidance lesson. With Denise, we have 3 other counselors, so it's not like that child would not get the same class. They just don't have to be with the dog.
Okay, so I guess that answers that. It would be primarily a guidance lesson. It's the teachers don't have to.
If we're going to use it in the classroom setting, that's how it would be. The dog is really going to be used just like it was used in the Zen den at the high school for a child who might be in crisis. They might need that extra comfort. We have sensory rooms in the elementary schools. There's 3 sensory rooms in the elementary schools. So if there is a child in there who's not calming down, maybe the dog is an option for that child. So again, the dog is just a tool in the toolbox to support the social and emotional needs of our kids.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because we have received communication from parents by email that is questioning because their child may have an allergy. Are they going to be excluded because of that allergy from participating in, whether it's a group lesson?
Sure.
So.
Yeah, we will make other options for kids to not miss, guidance lessons because the dog is an issue. And again, that's why we're flagging the kids, and we'll have a list of kids, and if there are kids in that room, and in the new building, because of the wonderful amount of space we have, if those kids, can go with a different class, because we have the collaborative space where those guidance lessons can be held. So there's different ways of delivering the same lessons for those kids who might be allergic or afraid, just like we have peanut allergy tables at the lunch. They're still eating in the lunchroom, but they're eating at a specific table.
Anybody else have anything?
It sounds nice, but I actually do it for a living. And I know that there's not enough staff to go take kids and do a parallel lesson. So I get that. I'm not gonna go, and you don't teach anymore like that. So, that sounds nice from a planning standpoint, but logistically, the space, and we're gonna run 2 parallel lessons with kids who, and then why aren't you going? Why aren't you allowed to go? It's just, I think it's a great thing. I know from the past, we don't think about process, and I can see this imploding. I can see it being a good thing, but I also see it imploding too because of a lack of process. So, that's it.
And I just want to say thank you to anybody who was involved in getting the grant and volunteering to train the dog. That's a big commitment. It's a really exciting opportunity for the district.
And Ellen, honestly, that's great, but you don't teach for a living. And so it sounds really great. The grant sounds really great. We probably could have used that grant for other things, but I am telling you logistically, I would bet we haven't had conversations with our staff. I would just bet that the dog just showed up and this is what happened. So you can thank everybody for getting trained, but I doubt they were surveyed on whether they wanted this or not.
So, Joelle, you talked about the slide and how that was going to be used in the building. Can you expand a bit on the dog washing station and how you see that?
So the dog washing station addresses exactly what I think some of the concerns are with special education. We are required for kids that have profound disabilities to teach them life skills. And what not a better life skill that you can teach them to teach kids how to care for a dog, something that can turn into a possible career for them later on in life. So the dog wash was purposely built, ADA compliant. So it's a raised up platform. So a child in a wheelchair can wheel right up to the dog wash and participate in washing the dog. The dog wash is located right outside of the room where our students with multiple handicaps will be. So it's very in proximity to where many of those kids would be. And it's not something that the dog's not going to get washed every day, obviously, but dogs do require bathing once a month, but it's just something that we put in. It's a nice feature that we can start at a young age, starting to develop some of those life skills that might spark some interest in some of our kids, maybe wanting to be that for doing that as a career path. So
Washing dogs is incredible. Grooming dogs, yes.
Is the idea that the dog washing station would be just for the therapy dog, or is the idea that we would wash other dogs?
the staff asked that when they were there. All the staff has absolutely loved the dog wash and the idea of why we put it in there. And they asked if they could use it to wash their own dogs. And, so we said, sure, after hours, we're not going to bring in your dogs and we're not running a kennel in the elementary school. But if it was, it could be, again, we do programming here at the high school where some of our special needs kids, they will come around and serve coffee and they do those kinds of things. I mean, it could be something that if in the future, we have no plans to do it now. The dog wash was designed to take care of our therapy dog and to provide an opportunity for our kids with multiple handicaps to learn some life skills. But if in the future, if people hear about it and ask those questions, it could be something that we can explore later.
I think you kind of answered this, but I just was wondering how often that will be used. I mean, it was a pricey item. So I said about once a month, you think that
So
I mean, for the kids engagement in that, yeah.
Okay. Have we thought at all about, I clearly haven't seen it. I've seen what a dog wash is, okay? I mean, I'm not a pet owner of a dog, but I've seen what a dog wash is. I'm just wondering if there's any way, knowing that you're looking at it, and it is ADA compliant, with wheelchairs being able to access it, if we could get creative and look at other uses, that could possibly teach other life skills as well. I'm sure once you're in, things get moving, but I would love to hear more about that too. Knowing that students need multiple opportunities and repetitions to gain skill, and the more access they have to that. So I would love to hear if they're able to utilize that space for other programs.
So regarding the therapy dog, it sounds like that was in the planning stages for at least maybe a couple of years.
Well, when we put the dog washing station as part of the building, I mean, it was that whole idea, why are we doing this? To have a therapy dog in the school, that when the school opened, we would do that.
Right. Yeah, because the board found out a month ago that we had the dog arrive, but I don't recall being informed before that a therapy dog was on the way, nor do I recall like updates like, hey, we're putting an application for a therapy dog. Therapy dog's coming in 3 months, the therapy dog's coming in the next month, we're expected to get the therapy dog. So like, and if you shared it with the board, I don't have any recollection of it. Was there any, did I miss it? Was there any mention that we're getting a therapy dog prior to a month ago?
I mean, we've talked about it talking through the project, but had we had a direct conversation about the therapy dog? No, but I mean, you hired me to run the district and make decisions, and we've made these decisions, and everything that we purchase on a day-to-day basis or decisions we make, I mean, they don't all come to the board level. If you feel that this was something that should have come to the board level, I mean, the staff is very excited about the dog. I know there's parents that are concerned, and we're happy to address those concerns that parents have, but the staff is nothing but excited about having the dog. So, that's not true. All the staff is not. That's not a true statement. Okay, the staff that you took through. So I want to be fair to the staff that didn't go through. They are not. We've heard from them. They're not all excited. So please, let's make very clear statements that are factual.
Yeah, to your point, Joel, you're right. This is not about the board being involved in every decision, but there has been a theme for many years as you've been in our district from the board saying the board would like a level of communication where we don't have surprises. And then the question becomes, what's a surprise? And a surprise is really anything that the public would question us about that we don't know about ahead of time. So, I would suggest that most of the board members on the current board would have found it very beneficial to get a heads up on this therapy dog coming from the day that you decided, hey, this might be a good idea. I mean, it doesn't need to be, let's have a board meeting about it so that we can give you input and make a decision on it, but we get weekly updates from you. So just put it in a weekly update. If board members don't have any questions, then go forge ahead. If board members do have questions, then maybe it's a personal conversation with a board member, or if there's enough churn on it, maybe it's a discussion like we're having now. So, what I would suggest is that I think it would be beneficial. You send us a weekly update on items like this, anything that might be public facing, like even the dog washing station and the slide, while they were in the original design, there was a lot in the whole project. And even though they're in the logs, there's a lot in there. So even amplifying that, saying, hey, this is going in, the slide's going in, just notifying and keeping the board informed, because we have, we're part-time on the board. So, we're trying to deal with all of our personal lives, professional lives, and keep up with all the board information that comes in. So, I think going forward, just please consider trying to keep the board as informed as possible. And there are board members who would appreciate being over-informed and under-informed. The the downside to being underinformed is we're having, you know, conversations like this, which would have been way more beneficial having this 6 months or a year ago versus today. Any other comments or questions on the topic? Okay, let's move on to item C, which is resolve, right, yeah, it is a, approval to adopt new board policy in final form. Resolve to adopt board policy 2266 as attached hereto at a single meeting of the Board of Education pursuant to board policy 0131 in the best interest and welfare of students and employees of the district. May I have a motion?
Second.
Second. Well, do you want to give a little explanation on this?
Yeah, so this was a policy we're asking the board to consider it in one reading. It was inadvertently not approved back in January, and this had gone into effect in January of 2021. So we were looking for some other things for policy, and our attorney noticed that we didn't have this policy in place. So we sent it to her. She edited it as you see written here, and asked if the board would consider approving it in one reading because it should have been approved back in January.
So, and just to clarify for those dialing into the meeting, normally we do 2 readings of policy changes before we adopt the policy. You can do it in 1 reading if there are circumstances that dictate that it makes sense. And in this case, it was legal guidance that we should get this policy in place sooner rather than later. Therefore, the recommendation was to do it in 1 reading. So that's why we're reading this policy once, and then we're going to approve it this evening, assuming there's a majority to approve. Any questions or comments? None. Craig, roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen,
Yes. Agenda item is approved. Move on now to item 10, superintendent's other business. Item A, which is 2023-24 and 2024-25 school calendar. Resolve to approve the school calendar. I'll just do the reading part. Resolve to approve the 2023-2024, 2024-2025 school year calendar drafts. Item B, resolve to approve the University of Akron CCP MOU for the 2022-2023 school year. Item D, resolve, is it C? No, sorry, C. Resolve to approve the Kent State University CPP MOU for the 2022-2023 school year. Resolve to approve the Lorain County Community College CCP MOU for the 2022-2023 school year. Resolve to approve the Cuyahoga Community College CCP MOU for the 2022-2023 school year. Resolve to approve the Teaching Strategies New Curriculum quote. Resolve to approve the Ohio Schools Council Cooperative Advertising and Receiving Bids for school bus chassis and bodies as attached. Resolve to approve the bus purchasing resolution as attached. Resolve to approve the BBHCSD choir and orchestra trip request for 2022-2023. Finally, item J, may I have a motion to approve superintendent's other business items A through I?
Before we do that, I have a question about the bus purchasing resolution.
So, sorry, if we do a motion in a second, then we can have discussion on it. So can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Why don't we have Joelle, can you walk through all of these and just give a brief explanation on all of them, and then we'll open it up for board questions.
Yes, so the 23-24 and the 24-25 school calendar, this is typically how we do this. The last couple of years, we've only approved the calendars 1 year at a time because we weren't sure on the timeline of the school opening. We wanted to make sure, but typically we'll approve 2 years worth of calendars at one time. We go through a process where we have a calendar committee. The calendar committee narrows it down to 2 versions of each year. It is sent out to the staff. The staff votes on those calendars, and so the 2 that you see in front of you are the ones that receive the most votes from all of our staff, not just our teaching staff, but classified as well. Items B, C, D, E are all our annual CCP agreements that we have with the local colleges, so our kids are able to take CCP classes at any one of those universities.
Sorry, can you tell us what CCP stands for?
College Credit Plus classes.
Thank you.
Item F is teaching strategies, new curriculum quote. It's for our curriculum for our preschool. We came and had our evaluation, step up to quality evaluation, and they were concerned about our curriculum. So we went through a curriculum review process and have chose this one to meet those requirements for step up to quality. The Ohio Schools Council Cooperative Cooperative advertising and bids. This is to receive bids for the school buses. You had a question about this? And then the resolution to actually purchase them. And so you had approved this last month, and I believe when Mr. Code was giving the update, he had said we were still able to get the spring prices that were bid last year. When we went to go purchase, they said they will not honor those, so we have to go through that whole process again. So now we have to use the fall bid numbers, which are significantly higher than what we thought we were going to do. So instead of buying 3 buses, we're actually buying 2, one special ed bus and one regular ed bus because of the increase in cost of about $50,000 for the year. And then item I is our BBHCSD choir and orchestra trip, where our 2 directors are sitting here in the back, hoping that you will approve their trip to go to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh of March of next school year.
Questions?
I just have a question about if this is just, could you expand on the selection of the curriculum for preschool? I understand that you doing it to align with step up to quality. But how's that process when you guys select curriculum? Staff were able to have their input.
Yeah, so typically when we do any type of curriculum adoption, we will get curriculum from a bunch of different places. We set up, we have different companies come in, teachers are involved, hearing those presentations. They usually leave us some samples to use, and so the teachers then use those samples, provide the rubrics to say how much they like those particular products, and then we take it back once we have that feedback from the staff to determine which curriculum we're going to use.
And this is definitely, everybody was on board for this. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And just a tag on, so were we replacing an old curriculum?
We were replacing an old curriculum that was
And what was the impetus to do the update on the curriculum? Was it just like, hey, it's time, the old curriculum is old, or was there some other impetus to change?
The curriculum that's in place right now did not meet all the new standards for preschool. So we had some holes in our curriculum, which we worked together with Dr. Martin's office to fix those holes for this year to meet the standards that we weren't addressing through the old curriculum, and knew that we had to build into the curriculum to meet all of the preschool standards.
Okay, just to summarize for those who might be dialing in, our old curriculum was old. It had gaps in it that didn't meet all the latest requirements. So we reviewed new curriculum and we're updating our curriculum so that we're in compliance with all state and federal laws. Yes. Other questions?
I just had a quick question about that. So we're only buying 2 buses now. Is the difference between what we were to have spent on 3 and the amount that we're spending on 2 just roll back into the bus fund for subsequent purchases?
So it would stay in the PI committee budget, basically. So that extra 50,000 will be there. It just wasn't enough to purchase a third bus. If you recall though too, is that not that we have a surplus of buses necessarily, but our bus fleet is very full. So we're not, by buying two, it's really not a disadvantage for us right now. In terms of our number of buses, I think this will put us at 60, 59, 60 with the two buses.
The two buses of
59.
So, and just to recap too, a little bit of recent history, we have been expanding our fleet size to align with the opening of our new elementary school building, which is going to require additional buses because we have more students to transport at one time, so we need more buses. And in this particular case, we were hoping to purchase 3 buses at last year's pricing that we thought we were locked in at, and that's what we were moving forward with. And then we were told, no, you can't get last year's pricing, you have to use updated pricing, which, you know, is inflation shock, and you couldn't get 3 buses, you can only get 2. So that's what this is all about. Other questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack, Mr. Dosen,
Yes. Motion carries. We will now move on to item 11, Superintendent's consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. And item D, may I have a motion to approve superintendent's consent items A through C?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Joelle, you want to walk us through?
We can talk through, or just do you have any questions about any of the recommendations on here? We have several retirements happening. This is the year that we're receiving a lot of them, so you'll see some of those retirements up there in our classified, mostly in our classified recommendations, and just some certified recommendations that are long-term stuff. Yeah, long-term stuff. So, any questions about any of those recommendations?
There's not a question about the recommendation, but I brought this up to Mr. Yana last, I want to say it. In the supplementals, the timing of the contracts, some of these have already happened. Am I wrong? Girls basketball, we're approving that. And I mean, is there a way we can shore this up a little bit better? I've asked you before. I told you there was a year where we did it all in, people have their paperwork in. It's not like new hires, but like in August when they have their paperwork in, and that, I don't know who this was, you know, who would have had that, maybe some of these people. Can we try and do this quicker, not after the fact?
Well, we do, but we can't pay them until they have their paperwork in. So if it's taken them that long to get their paperwork in,
Well, that's not always true. Some people have had their paperwork in, and I can think of 2 cases, and they are doing tryouts without a contract. So I'm asking that we make sure that we have a contract before. Some of these people do stuff in the summertime. They have camps in the summertime around our students. So I don't know how the contracts go. Do they stop in the summertime?
yeah, our contracts only run for the school year. So
Right.
whatever many of our coaches do over the summer is not, it's not tied to their supplemental at all.
Okay, so like
We do have a process in place that because of when the season starts, so fall sports are allowed to start August 1st. We try to get all those contracts that are for fall approved in July. We try to get all the contracts that are then starting November 1st for the winter season to approve those in October ahead of time. But yes, there's always going to be those stragglers because the people don't have their paperwork in. And we've had several situations, unfortunately, this year where somebody works and then they quit. So you'll see a coach on there making a recommendation for hires who could pay them, but then a resignation of that same coach. So, I mean, we have a process that the people are aware that ahead are organizations to know that, you know, if you want it for fall, your paperwork has to be in by July, so we can get it on the board agenda. If you're a winter person, it needs to be in by October. And if you're a spring person, we typically try to do those in February, but we're
always gonna have stragglers just based on when people get their paper.
So I can tell you that I know people have had their paperwork in and that nothing happens. So if we're having tryouts in February for baseball to approve that, we should be doing that in December, I would think, if we have their paperwork in. And I'm just asking because, you know, we have this, we need to be more rigorous with the people who are around our students, volunteers, have the board approved. I know as a board member, I've worked hard to make sure of that because that wasn't always part of our process. So, you know, I don't know where the holdup is, but I can tell you that there is a holdup. And there are people who've had their paperwork in, and it's still happening way after the fact. So, Mr. Yanavas, I shared that with you. I want to make sure it's in front of the public, the other board members, that that is not always the case, okay? So, you know, other than that, that was my only point. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, roll call. Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Yost?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 12, treasurer's consent agreement. Item A, resolve to approve the monthly financial documents as attached, cash position, check register, bank reconciliation, CFO report. Item B. Focus on mine because that's hard to read. Get it a little bigger. Whereas on or about November 2019, the Brecksville Rocky Heights City School District and the City of Brecksville entered into a shared use and management agreement. And whereas in that agreement, the district shall establish and maintain an enterprise fund. And whereas each party will contribute a minimum of $10,000 per year. And whereas the enterprise fund shall be used for the maintenance, repair, and replacement of items as outlined in the shared use agreement and directed by the operating committee. Be it resolved, the treasurer CFO is granted the authorization to create Fund 013 for this purpose. Item C, resolve to approve the engagement letter with LGS for the district's annual GAAP conversion as submitted. Item D, donations, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item E, resolve to approve the attached contracts as bid out through the E-rate program for both district internet services 5 years and Ethernet cabling at the high school. Item F, resolve to approve the minutes from the February 23rd, 2022 board meeting. Item G, may I have a motion to approve treasurer's consent items A through F?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Want to walk us through these, Greg?
So not a lot has changed, which is a good thing, I guess, in terms of how we're trending. It's a little bigger. As we approach the end of the year, we're doing pretty well. We just received our March settlement for real estate. 92,000 unfavorable to the forecast in terms of revenue, 158,000 favorable. So what that does to the cash balance at the end, looks like 172,000 of additional, which is just a little bit above what the forecast currently suggests. So we're going to continue to monitor that, but again, it looks good in terms of where we're trending. As I mentioned last month, this is the this is the February finances for revenue, and you see the local taxes is less. That's because they extended the deadline for taxes to be turned in. So we kind of received this year we received a larger March settlement payment than we did last year. But overall, again, things still look pretty good on the revenue side. As it compares to last fiscal year, again, it's the same thing. Our local taxes are less than what they were the previous year, which contributes to a large part of that. And then the state revenue looks much more consistent compared to last year as they kind of restored some of those funds, and then other revenue is very consistent as well. On the expenditure side, we are looking good in terms of, sorry, that's the last part of the revenues. There we are. February expenditures compared to last year, we are a little bit higher, and that's due to salaries and benefits, but we're still remaining lower in purchase services. as well as all other expenses look to be very, very stable. Higher than the previous year as we compare this year to last year. We are obviously higher in the salaries and benefits. That's due again to steps and percentage increases to the negotiated collective bargaining agreements. All other expenses though are down over $600,000. So our total expenditures are up by $419,000 overall. So again, that is favorable right now to the forecast of what we planned. As we've been navigating still the craziness of the pandemic, we hopefully are coming to a close of that. We are trying to again utilize as much grant funding as we have. We just received another, like it's a state subsidy part of ESSER 2 that we have to start to allocate next. So that was kind of a little surprise for us. They sent us a notification that said, hey, you didn't do this. And then I talked to other treasurers and it seems like they said they sent a notification, but I don't really think that they did. So Joel and I are working on that budget currently for how we'll utilize those funds as well. But again, we're trying to do as much as we can with any of those grant funds to keep the burden off of our general funds and create a better financial outlook for the district. Okay. The authorization for Fund 013, this is a process apparently. So just so every board is familiar with this, I have to get authorization from the board to create a fund like this. And in the process of this, we looked at the MOU that was established from the city when we did that shared use and management agreement. And when I first looked at it, it doesn't seem like this is really what meets the standard of what's called an enterprise fund. And so I contacted our auditors, Ray & Associates, and asked them that question. They agreed with me, but they told me I should reach out to local government services because that's through the auditor state's office to get clarification. They also agreed, however, they don't believe it's worth it to redo the MOU. What they're going to do is we are going to create an actual enterprise fund. 013 is it's a recreation enterprise fund. And then local government services, which is the contract that's next, they are who does our gap conversion. And what they will do is they will move that money on our financial statements from an enterprise account, which is tracked differently, into a special revenue account, which is what this money would actually qualify under. And so they're going to do that part in the background. So it's really a little bit of minutia, but that is why this is like this. So I have to actually fill out paperwork tomorrow to then submit this to the auditor state's office. And then after they approve it, then I need to create the fund. And then we'll get the ball rolling with getting the amount of money from the city. And then we'll have a transfer next month for the 10,000 from the general fund into this 013 fund.
So just to clarify too, maybe for the public, what we're talking about, this enterprise fund. So the new elementary school that we're building, the school district collaborated with the city of Brecksville. That was a wonderful collaboration that's paying huge dividends both for the district as well as for the city of Brecksville. But we shared some of the expenses of constructing. The city's constructed a field house, we've constructed a school, we have shared use agreements, so there's common property area. And what this agreement was when we entered into this collaborative arrangement was that we would create a fund that both the city of Brecksville would contribute to, as well as the school district, at least $10,000 a year to help maintain the common area. And that's what this is about. And so in the original MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, it was called an enterprise fund. Craig said it probably shouldn't have been, but path of least resistance, let's just go with what was recorded instead of trying to unwind some of that. So this is all about creating an enterprise fund, which will be to manage the funds that both the district and the city of Brecksville contribute to that help maintain the common areas and shared areas of the new building.
So again, the engagement letter with local government services, that's an annual contract that we do with LGS for the gap conversion. Donations are listed there. We have our E-rate contracts. Just as a reminder, E-rate for Brecksville Heights is a 40% reimbursement rate. So we front the money and then we get a reimbursement from the federal government for 40% after the project is complete. Then there's the minutes, and that's it.
So the E-rate, that's been going on, that program by the federal government's been around for a number of years.
So it has, so they have category 1 and category 2. This is category 1 and 2, right? Okay, yeah, because that's what I thought. The internet service provider is the internet piece of it is called category 1. And that's been very consistent. Category 2 is typically upgrades in hardware. So that's cabling, stuff like that. That's more access points, which we just went through last year. And the way that works is that they allocate X number of dollars every 5 years. And so there was question as to whether or not we were going to extend it 5 years. So category 2 is kind of more iffy, whether that program will continue, but it's been beneficial for schools to update their technology. And so far it has been continued.
Good. And so in terms of qualifying for these, you have to meet the requirements, probably if you're category 1, category 2, but there's no other requirements that you have to meet, so to speak. As long as the technology piece qualifies, you are eligible for E-rate discount.
Correct. Yeah. So we work with a E-rate consultant because it gets very, very tedious on their end, and we have to fill out a 470, which basically puts it out to bid, and then we award it through a 471. This is what it's called, and then that's where we award the contracts, and then we go through with the project.
Good. Any questions or comments?
I'm just out of curiosity, the price of gas started to cut into our expenses.
So far, I mean, I would say so far, no, it's going to though, I'm sure, with diesel prices at the moment, but luckily we have some underground storage tanks that were filled I think it was a month or 2 ago, actually, maybe 2 months ago. So we're hoping that'll get us to the end of the year. We may have to top off a little bit towards the very end. But hopefully we'll start to see gas prices go down, but luckily we can buy a lot of that in bulk, and we did that prior to this all happening, not like on purpose, but it was just the time to buy. But it worked out for us.
Can we use fuel perks on those?
Unfortunately, no. We do get a pretty good price, and we do get waivers on some of the taxes and stuff, which we fill out, and we get reimbursements after the fact. So some of these basic taxes up front, and there's a form to fill out, so we always apply for those as well.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mr. Joseph?
Yes. Motion carries. Item 13, closing items. Item A is announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for April 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Item B is adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mr. Joseph?
Yes, meeting's adjourned. Everyone have a good evening.